everyone, and welcome to the Racing Mentor Sponsorship Podcast. You're here with me, Jess Shanahan, and you've got Toby Trice with you as well. How are you doing today, Toby?
I'm super good, Jess. Just been listening to the podcast intro music, and it gets me super buzzed. I'm
Yeah, me
sure
too.
it's proper fun, isn't it? I really enjoy it, and that kind of like that sound of a race car as well just kind of gets me going, and along with that bassy tune, it's it's fun.
Yeah, nice. So what have you been up to?
I've had a mad week again. I said last episode that we was talking about how I've kind of been talking to sponsors and stuff, but I've continued that. I've had some amazing progress with three new potential sponsors for 2021, and everything's going currently to plan, which is great. But I did something really cool recently. I actually built my dream race car, but out of Lego, and yeah, it was lots of fun. I kind of haven't built a Lego model since I was a child, and I was in Smythes, a couple of weeks ago, and just impromptu bought a piece of joy. Really, my kind of goal, as you know, Jess, is to race at Le Mans one day in a Porsche RSR is the absolute dream, and follow the kind of Porsche ladder, and I kind of stumbled across the 911 Porsche RSR Lego Technique model, and I couldn't resist but to buy it. So I did. I spent the best part of, I think it was like 9 or 10 hours
Wow.
building it. I made a really cool vlog episode. If anyone's interested, head on to YouTube and just type in Toby Trice Racing. You'll see the episode on there. But the car is insane. Like the detail, the fact that everything works. There's actually an engine that works in there, and you can see all the pistons and conrods moving.
That's so
It blew my
cool.
mind. Yeah, it blew my mind.
I've wanted to do one of those for ages, but I just for some reason like either said, oh, they're expensive, I'm not going to get one, or just have never got round to it. But during lockdown, I've been really getting into jigsaw puzzles.
Have
And I
you?
feel like doing like one of those really technical Lego models is like the same, except more on brand because there's a race car at the end of it.
100%. And I mean, I've got to yet find some space for this. Katie did make a little chuckle at me saying, where are you going to put that? Because I didn't realize how big it would be. But once I've got my trophy cabinet all finished, I'm sure that's going to take a prize place there. Because yeah, it's like you say, it's proper on brand, and it's a cool piece to have. But 100% would recommend grabbing yourself a Lego Techniques set, Jess. Like, they're so cool.
I might do it and just have it in the office because we've got like a little table that we use for freelancers and stuff that come in. Because no
Mm.
one's doing that at the moment. I could just set up some Lego there, and then I've got like 4 holes in my set of shelves there as well that we could just like put some finished models in. So I've got the space. That's tempting.
Mega. It is tempting, but say goodbye to maybe a day or two of your life, because you may not get that back because you'll spend building this. So there might there might be a podcast delay, I think, after that.
I don't need to do any work, it's fine. Um, right, so today we are going to talk about Instagram and kind of how to build Instagram followings and get like a really good looking feed, use stories, all of that kind of stuff. But I want to start by kind of talking about our experiences on Instagram, because I think we both do Instagram very well, but we probably have very different experiences and strategies behind it. So Toby, can you start by kind of explaining where you're at with Instagram and what your approach is to it?
Yeah, so I've been on Instagram for quite a long time personally, but Toby Trice Racing page has been on for, I think it's about 16 or 17 months, maybe a little bit longer now, and I've had a really enjoyable experience of Instagram, and I've managed to build my page from 0 to just shy of 1,100 followers now, which I think is actually not a bad growth for the first kind of year. I'm looking to accelerate it, but yeah, I've kind of applied lots of different strategies along the way, things that I've learned from you, things I've learned from other Instagrammers. But it's actually my favorite platform, Jess, because I love pictures. I kind of love imagery. So it's a perfect fit for me in that respect. But I love the Instagram community. I think it's quite a friendly space, and everyone's quite kind of interactive and engaged on what I'm up to, and vice versa. So I think it's really great. How about your experiences?
So I've really started focusing on Instagram over, I guess, the lockdown period. Like I've always loved posting pictures and stuff, and I'm like you, I love a bit of photography, and my personal page was always very relaxed, just posting like nice pictures whenever I had one, like if I'd been somewhere, if racetrack or traveling, whatever it might be. And then when I thought, right, I'm gonna have like a serious focus on the Racing Mentor Instagram, I my biggest thing was posting consistently. And for the most part, I do 1 to 4 posts a day. That's kind of dropped off a little bit in the last week or so, but it won't take much to get back to that. So my real focus is on 2 things. So having a really, really like clear brand on there, but also being consistent. So I'm posting regularly, but I want my feed to look really nice. So I usually alternate like a graphical post that has like a quote or a tip or something in it with an image of a race car. And obviously lockdown's been tough because I'm running out of images of race cars, which I think I've mentioned on this podcast before.
Yeah,
So
because
there's,
you've got to think on the feet, haven't you? You've got to really, you've
yeah,
got to dig deep and think on your feet at this time.
yeah, absolutely. So they're kind of my focuses. So is there anything that you found that has really worked for you in terms of kind of getting engagement and growing your following?
Yeah, I've recently been quite a fan of stories. I think Instagram seems to be pushing the kind of stories part of their platform at the moment, and I've kind of got on board with that. I actually post less than you do, Jess, on my feed.
Mm,
Um, in January, I posted every day. I had a kind of story in a lead up to launching my 2020 campaign, and that strategy was amazing. I had an amazing engagement. It went through the roof. In fact, I had some of my record months of 12 or 15,000 impressions. I think one was up to about 18,000 impressions, which for a small following was pretty insane.
mm,
But as of late, I think Instagram Stories has been my kind of wins really. What I've been doing is I've been creating just small polls, things that are convenient and easy to tap or click or interact with, but it has then led to actual engagement through DMs.
yeah,
And I've kind of brought in my sponsors in on those strategies. So, um, rather than sitting saying, "Oh, here's my sponsor," and there's not really much engagement there, I've actually been sort of doing like kind of problem solving. So, one of my sponsors, New Street Design, she's just started which is Katie, my fiance. She's just started a new dog brand, and I've been putting stuff out there saying who's a dog lover, who's got a pet, and that kind of stuff. And
nice.
people quickly tap and interact. And then it meant that I can then feed my audience straight into their Instagram page. And the engagement's amazing because who doesn't love a dog? I'm a massive dog fan.
Absolutely.
But also I'm creating then engaging content for my partners. And like my brand design, Jess, that was obviously launched very recently. I had so much engagement on that because we built it up, created this kind of suspense, and then we dropped it in with this huge like bang, here we are. And that allowed my engagement rate to increase astronomically. But also the sponsors that worked for me on my brand design, their social media went crazy also. So and that was predominantly through stories, Jess, if I'm honest. So we did obviously do some Instagram feed posts, but the stories have been amazing. Like, I don't know what your experiences are with stories at the moment.
I would say kind of similar. Like I really love doing Instagram stories. I kind of use them in a similar way that you've done with like in the run up to a launch. So I would say I know obviously my business is very different to a racer, but going up to, I think it was the first webinar, I went really, really hard on Instagram stories to promote, come and learn about relationship building. And I did similar stuff to you, like, do you know how to build relationships with sponsors, all of that kind of stuff. So I could DM people that said, oh, I've got no clue. So it worked really well as like a sales tool for me as a more like traditional business. So I like it in that respect, but I like stories for getting that interaction with the audience. So exactly in the way that you're saying of, getting people commenting, voting on polls, you can then DM them. I think that's really valuable. But in terms of engagement, I probably see like, I guess the best engagement from personal stories that I share in my captions. So one of the ones that stands out is I did just a text post that was like about proving someone wrong if they doubt you, and how that's like such a good feeling. I think it's really relevant to racing drivers who might have family who go, you can never be a racing driver, or even other racing drivers who say that to you. I've had a lot of that.
Yeah.
And it's just so nice to go, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. And it's quite a good motivation. I was talking about how, just in short, rather than telling my whole life story here, but I was talking about how when I studied business at college, I had a business studies teacher who she was okay, and I think she liked me. But when I went to hand in my final bit of coursework, it was a marketing or a business plan for a music company that I was actually doing work for at the time, because I started my career in the music industry.
Wow.
And she rang me up when I was getting paid 20 quid an hour at 18 to teach music to kids, or teach music business to kids. She rang me up going, all of this is wrong in your business plan, you're never going to succeed, literally shouting at me down the phone. I'm like, I'm here getting paid to do my own business. Like, I don't get it. And I got like a D on that piece of coursework, but I actually then tweaked that business plan, got a load of investment money for the music company, and now I run successful businesses. So it was like a very kind of personal story about how I've done this thing of proving people wrong. And then I got lots of comments from other people like, so and so said I'd never make it, and then I joined this team, or I won my first championship after someone said this. So those personal stories, I think, that resonate with other people are the ones that definitely get me the best engagement.
Yeah, and the story like that as well is definitely really engaging, because I think we've all had times in our lives where we've kind of gone, I'm going to prove that person wrong, especially as racing drivers in the racing community. We're out there fighting hard for wins and championships and podiums, etc. And that real life example you've shared then, Jess, will really resonate with so many people. So I didn't know that about you, actually. That's quite interesting.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories, just because it's a great success story for me, in that the business plan I wrote at 18 got investment, which I think is just like a great way to set me up for life. But yeah, it's I post a lot of stories like that, because I think it's important on social media. And I know we talked about this during like the How to Build Your Audience podcast episode. But I think it's good to show you as like a real human being that's been through challenges, that's overcome stuff, had successes, but also had these life experiences that other people can resonate with. I think that's really important, and that is the reason that YouTubers who do vlogs are so popular, because people were just looking for some human connection, and the fact that they can now get that over social media, it has kind of like made this perfect I guess breeding ground for influencers who are able to talk to people like that, rather than just journalists or businesses who are a bit more kind of corporate and faceless.
Yeah, I think you can be, by being sort of more genuine and open and honest on social media, you do get more engaged sort of like audience and platform from that. And it's just really nice to actually I think it's really nice just to be open, honest, Jess. And I follow more accounts that are like that, rather than really polished kind of, only the good stuff. I think it's good to show a bit of, I think there's a couple of Instagrammers that are in the racing world that have shared some content recently. One was about, he shared about how his engine failed, and he explained the story about it and stuff like that. And I think, there's some drivers that wouldn't even like mention the bad stuff, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But then, as a race driver, I've looked at that post and gone, oh, I can really relate to that. That must really suck. And then I've kind of commented and engaged, and then obviously that's helped his following and stuff. So I think it's really good to put kind of everything out there, rather than just the really polished stuff.
Yeah, totally agree. So I want to touch on creating a really cohesive brand look. And again, this goes back to one of the early podcasts, maybe the first podcast that we did about branding, and how it's important to have this quite clear brand look. And I think you and I both do that really well, but in very different ways.
Yeah.
So from my point of view, as I said, I do this kind of thing where I have an image, and then I'll have this graphical text post, because obviously my whole brand is about teaching people, and it's easiest to do that with text. But then I also post nice pictures of race cars. But I think one of the biggest things that I did to kind of change like the look and feel of my feed was to make those text posts consistent, so they're always in the same template of this purple background, white writing, same font, and then these two turquoisey lines at the side, but then also using the same filters and the same kind of editing on my images as well. I think that's really, really important. And I don't like the Instagram filters. Like, they're okay for like the odd selfie on my my personal Instagram if I don't have time to edit, but I use a slightly more advanced filter app called VSCO. And I know other people use stuff like Lightroom, there's Snapseed, there's loads of different editing apps. But the point is, whatever you use, try and use the same kind of way of editing or the same filter each time, because then it brings this kind of consistency in terms of like the tone and color of your images.
Yeah, that's really important, because just from my photography experience in the past, having a look is on brand, but it gives something that when people are scrolling through their news feeds and they see your image pop up, by it being on brand, it's like, oh, okay, here's Jess's Racer Mentor post, and straight away I stop. um
Mm.
I think I've got, like, this is just from my experience as a user. I tend to scroll really quickly. It's kind of like that aimless thumb exercise that you just kind of
Mm.
just scroll through your feed. But
Yeah.
then when I see something that I recognize, I stop and look at it and then understand it and then engage potentially with that post. And I think if you're creating really cohesive stuff on your Instagram feed, i.e., through a graphical text post like you said, Jess, or having a really consistent image look, and being consistent on the imagery, then your audience are then going to sort of know what to expect when they see the next picture. So when they do sit on the newsfeed, they're more likely then to engage in it.
Yeah.
I did some reading and research recently about that sort of mentality. Is that we're on social media a lot now as a society, particularly among millennials and in that kind of age group. They spend a lot of time on social platforms, but they don't actually give much time for each post. And you've got to grab the attention really quickly, so that someone does stop and go, I'm going to now engage with that. And I do think that by being consistent, having a cohesive brand and using those kind of features, it really does help. I follow many accounts and I don't think I engage with barely any of them, Jess, if I'm honest, because I
Mm.
don't seem to have a connection with them. I've followed them in the past, but I've kind of lost that connection with them, perhaps because they've come off brand or there's something that doesn't sort of resonate with me. But yeah, just having that cohesiveness is really, really key.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think there's also like we don't really know what the algorithms are doing. But I think if you can create content that people are engaging with, it means that they're gonna see more of your content. Because Instagram goes, oh, you like that one post, maybe you'll like their 12 previous posts, which is why you occasionally see something from someone in your feed that was posted like 5 days ago. And I'm commenting like, oh, hey, this looks really fun. I'm like, oh God, that was 5 days ago. I'm so behind. Because I think Instagram just wants to serve you all of the stuff that you've missed from someone, if you haven't been on Instagram for a day, especially if you've engaged with their posts in the past. And I think this kind of having that brand appeal also helps you get followers as well, because I think that, I mean, I've certainly done this. I know that other people do it as well, that, you know, if you see an interesting post on like the explore page, or when you're looking at hashtags, if you see an interesting post, you might click on that person's profile just to see what they're all about. You obviously look at their bio, is that interesting? But if their feed is just like a collection of what looks like just random rubbish images, you probably won't follow them. Whereas if they've got something structured, it's quite clean, it's pretty, it looks like it's consistent, then I think you're more likely to follow.
Yeah, I'm definitely in that boat. I usually only follow people that when I click on their profile, I see this cohesiveness, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll give them a follow, and then you know what to expect, because that's what you want to
Yeah.
see, right? You chose to see it. You can see what they post. You see they post consistently, and then you go, well, I'm interested in more of that. Whereas if
Yeah.
it's all a bit random, you just tend not to take too much interest, which is a shame, because they might have actually really valid
Yeah.
captions in those pictures, but because you're short on time, you don't necessarily process it. So let's talk about captions, Jess, because that covers kind of like the look, getting
Mm.
attention, making it look on brand and keeping it all kind of ideal. But then you need the caption to back that up. Now, I'm not a particularly good writer. I've said this many times in vlogs and on this podcast that I'm not a great writer. I'm better in spoken, but you're an amazing writer, Jess. You seem to
Thank you.
just be able to just put things down, and your copy is great. So when I look at you, engage your posts, obviously your copy's really thought provoking, and I think that once I've sort of stopped and seen your posts and actually read the actual caption, I kind of follow it, and I'm really then inclined to reply to a comment or follow it. And yeah, have you got any tips for those that are listening on how to create really kind of engaging captions?
Yeah, so I would start off by saying that don't worry about not being a great writer. Like the biggest thing that you can do is just kind of write in your own voice. So like the way that people kind of engage with written content isn't being like, oh wow, there's a big word that I didn't know, that person's so clever, or wow, that grammar's perfect. It's more about just hearing how you speak in your captions. So I'd say that's kind of like step one, because I think a lot of people are worried about it. Same with blog posts and any other kind of written media. But in terms of like creating something that's thought provoking, it's about doing something relatable, but also asking the right questions. So I think about what's happened in my life, because again, it's very on brand for me to talk about myself and show myself as like a human being that everyone can connect with, because I know there are a lot of kind of coaches and influencers out there who don't do that, as we talked about.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to kind of sit down and plan, because there is kind of the tendency, and I've absolutely done this, to go, that's a pretty picture, what can I barely connect to that to tell a story. And it doesn't always work like that. So I like to think about the captions and what's thought provoking first, and then find a relevant image to go with it. So it kind of depends on who your audience is. So think about what's important to them, what are their values, how does that match up with what you do. So for Racing Mentor, obviously I'm talking about business skills, I'm talking about motorsport. So I might post a story that's about imposter syndrome and like a time that I struggled with that, but then also give some tips on how I overcame it, and what other people can do to kind of manage that aspect of their lives. So definitely kind of think about how you can provide value. And even if it's just an entertaining story, you don't always have to be teaching or saying something that's really motivational. You can just tell an interesting story. But I would say maybe one of the most important things is make it easy to read. So break up the text, use emojis, which is why I use so many. I love an emoji. But here is my top tip of this podcast. I use just full stops to break up the text, to make paragraph breaks. But that only works if you don't have a space after the previous line. So I'd like write my sentence full stop, and then a lot of, like, if you double tap on the space bar on an iPhone, it does a full stop and a space, so you can write your next sentence. But we don't want to do that in this scenario. So delete that previous space, new line, full stop, new line, and then you can just type again. And when that's then published and you get your little caption underneath, you'll have a nice line break with a dot in the middle. So if anyone wants to see what that looks like, go to instagram.com/racingmentor, and you'll see how I also use emojis and things to do like bullet points. So I often use stars, or I'll use dots. I have emojis like kind of at the beginning of a caption, just to say, hey, read on, all that kind of stuff. I think it works really well for capturing attention, because I think because of the way social media is now, we almost blank out text. We just want to see pictures. And because emojis are pictures, it kind of makes you go, oh, here's another picture for me to look at. And then you end up reading on.
I might make a whole caption of emojis and just try that out.
Well, there's so many great like games, aren't there, of like people posting like a series of emojis, like what is this movie title? And I'm rubbish at them. But then I am the person that said knife runner rather than Blade Runner when presented with a picture of a knife and someone running. So I can't speak there. But yeah, you could absolutely do a whole caption that's just emojis.
I think it'd be quite fun. I might try that on a future post.
I might have a go as well, yeah.
That sounds like fun. There's a challenge to the audience. Create a post with just emojis onto the caption and see.
Yes.
And actually write it.
Yeah, and absolutely, like, just tag us in anything that you've got emojis in, and see if we can kind of get it. And I'll try and do better than Knife Runner.
That would be quite cool. Maybe actually that would be the challenge. Maybe we should do this thing where in the picture you describe the picture with emojis, so no text, just purely. I'm going to try that. That sounds fun.
I'm going to try it too. There's a series of Instagram stories in that as well, though, isn't there? Like,
yeah.
Hey, which of my races am I describing with these emojis?
And that's the thing with social media, isn't it? Is we've just come up with just a quick idea there, really off the spur of the moment, just that wasn't planned. But that's the cool thing with social media is, for those that are listening, just experiment with different strategies. As mad as they might sound, or as they can be the most amazing, or they could be the worst ideas, but unless you actually put them into practice, you're never going to know. And don't be afraid to test on the platform different things and see what works. So I want to talk next, and it's a little bit of a tip from me. I know you use this, Jess, yourself, is to post consistently in terms of daily or whatever your sort of period of time that you post on with. Is I use a software called Buffer, and I know I have not posted so regular on my feed lately, but when I'm in a period of here's my strategy for the next week or month, I use Buffer, and I literally sit down for maybe 2 or 3 hours at the computer, and I write all my social feed literally in that time, and Buffer essentially just automates it straight on social media at the times I want them to post. So one thing that I struggled with in the early days on my Instagram before I kind of started using this platform is I think, oh, I know a good time to post is about 6 o'clock. So I'd get to like 5:30, 5:45, I'd go, what shall I post? And then not bother. And then you've missed a day, or you've missed an interaction, or you've missed, and then another time I've had an idea and it's been like 2 o'clock and I thought, oh, it's not a good time to post, and I've completely forgotten about the idea later on. So Buffer's really nice because you can sit down, really carefully spend time putting a strategy together. You can kind of almost map out what your feed's going to look like, because you're going to see it all in a chronological order. And once you just click go, it all just uploads, and it's super clever. I think it's the free version's amazing. The professional or the paid version of it, which is on subscriptions, even better, because you can put hashtags in on the first comment, and it goes on at the moment you post the post goes live, so that it's really fresh in the hashtag order. But yeah, Jess, I know you've used it before, and I think you actually recommended it to me. What are your experiences with that kind of software? Or there are others, but Buffer is something that you use.
Yeah, I liked that Buffer was just about the scheduling, whereas I found that other tools like Hootsuite and similar were about your feed as well. I didn't
Yeah.
really want that, so that's why I like Buffer. It's just I can just sit down and I can focus on just getting the content out there and creating something that's a nice strategy. Whereas if I'm on Hootsuite, which I used to use before, I'm once again distracted by social media. So yeah, I really like Buffer, and I actually use it for scheduling pretty much everything socially. But actually, one thing that I have done when I haven't fancied posting to Buffer, or it hasn't made sense, or I've forgotten about it, I go onto Instagram and I'll upload my picture and I'll write my caption, but then I save it as a draft. So then I can go, well, actually now at 5 a.m. when I've just got up is not the time to do this. So I'll just save it as a draft, and then I can come back to it at like 10 a.m. when normal people are up and out looking at their phones and stuff. So that's another tip. If you are like, oh, I'm going to post this Instagram thing, you start doing it and then you think, actually now's not the time, just save it as a draft. Then all you've got to do is hit go when you're ready.
Yeah, and time's quite key with Instagram, isn't it? I know I've kind of like experimented with when's the best time to post, and it does sort of change as my audience is growing. But like you said, the timing is almost as important. I don't really know exactly how the algorithm works, but getting quick engagement at a time when your audience is most likely to engage with content is quite important for the early success of a post, and to get the biggest potential reach you can get.
Yeah, absolutely. And some audiences will want posts at different times to others, so that's something to kind of bear in mind. But I think again, this is key with all social media, is just to experiment and then see when your audience is most likely to engage, and then kind of run with that.
Absolutely.
So let's just touch on Instagram story strategy. I know we've talked about how kind of we use them, but I feel like they're quite daunting for some people, because there's so much going on in a story. Like, what do you do that's going to get engagement? How do you use the stickers? All that kind of stuff. So do you have any tips there, Toby, for like how people can get to grips with the story and start doing those a bit more regularly?
Yeah. Something I do now, more than I used to do, is my stories. I kind of keep everything really consistent, so it makes it easy and convenient for me. So I use the same font, the same colors, and when I post, I keep it quite straightforward and simple. as far as stickers go, I actually am a bit random with them. I don't really have a strategy. I kind of, what I tend to look at on the Instagram stories is that they always seem to be adding new features and new things and new elements to the stories. So for me, it feels like Instagram want you to try and experiment and just, use the stories as a bit of a fun place rather than something that's too serious. I don't know what your thoughts on that, Jess, are, but I feel like I just experiment, literally what we've just been talking about. Um, Post stuff on there, thought-provoking things, polls, questions, quizzes. But what I do as well is that I've had created for me 3 kind of like Instagram story templates, which if I'm creating a text-based story, I can simply use that as the background image. So it's got Toby Trice Racing as my brand. It's got like my kind of little social followings on the bottom. And then I can literally just type on that as a, as a story, and it's instantly recognizable on people's, when they're watching my story then, because it's on brand and it's consistent to how I normally post. So I tend to do that quite a lot. But yeah, I just have fun. And something that I haven't done so much lately, but I know works really well, is just jump on the camera and just let people hear your voice and chat about something that's relevant or what you're up to. People really enjoy that.
Yeah, maybe that's one of the things that people worry about, is that to do a story, they only have to go on camera. And I would always encourage people to get comfortable being on camera, because at some point in your career as a racing driver, you're going to get a lot of that. So having control over it on an Instagram story where you go, now I'll do another take, is really good practice. But yeah, I completely agree. Like, have fun and experiment with stuff. So like, one of the sticker buttons is you've got stickers for DM me a poll where you can ask a question with 1 or 2 answers, whether it's yes or no or something else. You can do quizzes, you can do like a question and answer thing. So there's so many ways that Instagram stories have like built in for you to get engagement, that you should absolutely try using them. One thing that we both did ages ago was I got this idea from you, Toby, was to do that whole ask me my top 3.
Yeah.
And I did the same thing, and I said to people, ask me my top 3, and I created this graphic where I could just type onto an image that I uploaded, so it was all on brand and quite clear and consistent, and it was just really fun. So some people asked me my top 3 racing drivers. I think I got top 3 biscuits, but again, it creates this kind of fun engagement, so people see you as really approachable, and that's important for building relationships with your fan base and creating a fan base, but also important for building relationships with sponsors and potential sponsors as well. So always think about kind of how you can come up with ideas to get people chatting to you. I think that's like a really, really key point of stories, is just to encourage people to engage with you in some way.
Yeah, and just make it fun. Just have some fun with it, and don't be afraid to go on camera and make a video, because I think I really enjoy watching little short interviews of people, of what they've been up to and stuff, and because I'm just curious of their story. And in my opinion, there's no better way to show yourself than be in front of the camera chatting to your audience about what you've been up to. I used to be really, really nervous about doing Instagram stories, because I was thinking, oh, how do I, how am I going to say this? Am I going to say it correctly? And I used to think about all these things, but now I just think, oh, just get on and do it. And I've made loads of stories before where I've actually deleted them because I wasn't confident about putting them out there, but I should have just done it. And anything now, I just do it in one take, quick post, and it doesn't matter if you make a mistake or you get tongue tied or you don't say necessarily the correct thing. Just have fun, experiment, and you'll be really surprised what results you get.
Yeah, and I think it's quite natural as well to make mistakes when you're talking on camera, and that's what you want with. I feel like Instagram stories are a less polished version of your main feed. So like, your main feed might be that really slick professional shot with a race car, but your Instagram stories should have a bit more personality, in that you're just waffling on, talking to people, asking questions, and telling a story. And I think it's that distinction that makes Instagram so nice. Like, you can see this shiny side, but then you also get to know someone on the story side as well.
Yeah, I'd love to know what people think about that, actually. Just in the Racing Mentor community group on Facebook, it'd be nice to hear you guys, what your thoughts on stories, because yeah, on that note, yes, kind of that almost amateurish type, just camera iPhone footage is perfectly watchable. But that's all I expect on Instagram stories. I don't see the point of going to town with some really like polished like footage. Leave that for
Yeah.
your Instagram and TV.
Yeah,
Um,
agreed.
yeah, so guys, yeah, if you can let us know what you like to see on Instagram stories, that would be really cool. And let's just grow this community together and experiment and let us know your results.
Yeah, definitely. Should we move on to talking about our driver of the week?
Yes. Yeah, we've had some amazing winners so far. And this week we've got an even more amazing winner. And if you can introduce this one, Jess, I think this would be your bag.
Yeah, absolutely. So this one's actually really relevant to Instagram as well. So I want to put forward a young Carter called Aurora Joel. She's on Instagram as Aurora_Joel_ racing. Now she's a 7-year-old Bambino Carter, but the way that she, and I'm guessing her family team, the way that they're doing Instagram is amazing. Like, firstly, she's got such attitude, and you can absolutely see her personality through every single picture. But she's doing video content, the captions are fun. I just think this is a really, really great example of Instagram for any age of racing driver, in terms of how to show personality through an image, also consistency. But also I think it's a really good exploration of how to promote a young Carter as well. I don't know who's in charge of her Instagram. I'm guessing it's a parent. But I just think, whatever Aurora and her team are doing is just really, really working. Like, she's got this great following of people who are behind her and cheering her on. So she gets tons and tons of likes, like so many, compared to like how big her following is. So her following is about 1,200, but her pictures are getting like 300 likes, 200 likes, 100 likes. So people are really kind of getting behind her and what she's doing. So I just think she's just a great example of how to use Instagram. But also I love seeing girls who are karting just doing something really cool. And I think that's really important for, other children who are like, oh, I want to get into motorsport. And especially for young women and girls, there aren't those ambassadors. So to have a 7-year-old Carter with such personality, I think is really important. So congratulations, Aurora.
Yeah, super inspirational. And yeah, I wish her the very best success for her career. It looks like she's got a great future ahead of herself. If she's nailing this kind of stuff now at this age, imagine what she's going to be capable of in the commercial world of motorsport. When she's an adult, and she's, I'm sure she'll be, who knows, maybe F1 Jess. Maybe we've spotted one of our future F1 stars right there.
Maybe that's what Drive of the Week is all about, isn't it? It's about kind of, rewarding people. But I think, we're spotting talent, and you can kind of see who's going to do well in the future.
Yeah, and yeah, go give her a follow. She's so inspirational, and I think for 7-year-olds to have that much confidence at that age is quite inspiring, I think, for sure. And yeah, congratulations, Aura. It's amazing to have you on board with one of our RM winners.
So just before we sign off as well, I want to remind people that, when we're talking about things like Buffer, or we're mentioning, the Instagram accounts or the social accounts of our driver of the week, all of that information and the links and stuff, as well as other info, can be found at blog.racingmentor.com, because we have podcast notes. So you can find the notes for whatever podcast you've enjoyed listening to, be it this one, a future one, or one in the past. You can go find all of the notes that has all of those links. So if you're thinking, oh, what was that thing that they talked about for social scheduling, you can just find the podcast notes rather than trying to like scroll back on your podcast app and try and find it. So just a reminder for you guys out there. But I think that's all we have for this week. So I just want to say thank you all for listening, and thank you for kind of subscribing and giving us feedback. We really appreciate it. We will see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week, guys. Thank you for tuning in.